It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. This show is brought to you by GetTheTea.com, the life change tea at GetTheTea.com. This is the stuff that will change your life, I can promise you that. Go to website, GetTheTea.com, all kinds of supplements and herbal remedies, or herbal drinks and all kinds of different things for whatever ails you. But the one I'm using is GetTheTea.com, life change tea. Drink it in the morning. I'm off the coffee. I'm back on the Daniel fast. I'm swimming. I'm biking. I'm hiking. And I'm feeling great. We have with us a returning guest, Grant Stern from WashingtonPress.com and Stern Facts. Great stuff he's working on here. He posted it the other day on Facebook, and as soon as I saw it, I jumped right on it. Let's get him on the show. Grant Stern, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, man, great stuff. I really love your work, man. We had Grant on before.
Thank you.
No, yeah, really. I had Grant on before about Rosneft, and you got to look at Rosneft. If you want to understand what's going on with all the Russian interference and stuff like that, it's not reported a lot for some reason, but Rosneft makes everything make sense.
Oh, well, there's been actually a lot of action with the Rosneft deal. They've been they retraded the shares at a very minimal or modest profit to a Chinese holding company. So pretty interesting stuff there. I'm getting ready to do some sort of big update with that.
Well, what does that mean?
For your listeners, I haven't really told anybody about this, but I pitched it at whowhatwhy.org.
Okay.
They're a nonprofit journalism outlet out of New York. They're kind of like the New Yorker in the sense that they have a very in-depth editing process, and they kind of invited me to write some stuff for their site. So that's kind of exciting. But, nobody knows that. Only your listeners.
Oh, thank you very much. And what does this mean if the Chinese are buying? What is that? How does that affect us? What does it mean?
Well, if you look at what's been going on in just the last week, China's defense minister flew to Moscow and said, hey, we got your back if America gets aggressive. This is all part of their strategy to counterbalance Trump, because Trump is a problem. So Trump is pretty much creating enemies where there were none. He's running out and saying China's our enemy. So they're saying, okay, well, we have to oppose you now. And that's what's going on.
Yeah, I believe China, too, said that they would cover Russia in Syria, too. They're getting involved in there. Did you hear that?
No, I haven't heard about that yet, but it wouldn't surprise me. China's extremely practical.
Okay, so now what is going on? The story is unsealed illegal deal. Trump's partner struck with federal prosecutors in WashingtonPress.com. But Felix Sater, the man with a get-out-of-jail-free card. What's going on there?
He's the guy.
Yeah.
Well. Where do we start?
Yeah, right.
So I tootled over to the Drudge Report to see what they were up to. And the top headline, Comey calls Trump a mobster, something along those lines. And that's very, very accurate, actually, much more accurate than I think people appreciate. And the reason is his long-running ties to this man, Felix Sater, who he tells a lot of tall tales, and we know a few things about him. There are some people that know more about him, but they can't talk. The courts have silenced them. And that's really what that story is very much about. If you read to the bottom of that story, it explains how the judges forbade the lawyers in the case against all case law and all precedent from telling anybody about Felix Sater's secret work with the government. Okay? So that's an important thing to keep in mind, that the judicial system and the executive branch have teamed up to try and keep this guy a black hole, like a legal black hole. And there's a longer format story. I actually wrote that story in three parts on on the sternfacts.com and consolidated it and condensed it into two shorter parts for Washington Press. They like shorter format, so 2,500 words is short form, yes. But in a longer format, I kind of go a little bit more deeply into how the same judge that gave Felix Sater a pass gave his father a similar pass. And each time they didn't properly consider the mandates of federal law that require victims' notice and restitution to the victims and heirs of those victims for crimes. So Felix Sater's father, who was also a Russian mob associate, he got the same deal from the same judge. And and here's the thing, this same judge is like notorious for giving out these sweetheart deals to mobsters. He sentenced Samuel Bolgano, which is actually a case that many people may not know Robert Mueller prosecuted.
Really?
But they always expected that Sammy the Bull was going to do some time, and this judge gave him probation. And frankly, it's an unusual situation. But as I've written, it violates the separation of powers. Judges don't have the power to ignore what Congress says. And to take this all a step further into the political world, to explain something that happened in the recent past that didn't seem to make a lot of sense, amongst many reasons, but this was an important one. The last Attorney General took an unusual amount of time to get confirmed. Right?
Right.
Not Sessions, but Loretta Lynch. Well, Loretta Lynch was the presiding U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of New York, which is Brooklyn and Long Island in that area. She was the U.S. attorney there, and she participated in fighting to keep Sater's record sealed personally. In fact, 2000 press release that she put out, this is in stories and stuff. The 2000 press release that she put out named Sater as one of the convicted defendants. But I think that was by accident, But it was out there. It's public. You can still find it on the Washington Post's website, right? So, it tells you this is a crazy situation. It really literally goes all the way up to the top. So when she was getting confirmed by Congress, Senator Chuck Grassley, who was the head of the Judiciary Committee right now, the Republican senator from Iowa, he actually wrote these bills, and he was very not answers, and I concluded in my story she dodged the question. She was asked, did Felix Sater had a fair deal, or did people get hosed? And when you have something like a situation where an official proceeding is being derailed, Robert Mueller is investigating that. In a different instance, it's called obstruction of justice. And if you have multiple incidents of obstruction of justice, a pattern in practice, an association of people, in fact, not necessarily organized or in paper, that's called a racket. Racketeering influenced corrupt organization. There's an act for that. That's the mob law. So, it's very interesting that what we've uncovered there, what these judges showed us through censorship, could actually be the key to unraveling a judicial racket in Eastern New York. Because there's not a lot of reason these judges should be, censoring this stuff. There's only so far you can go and still be a democracy. And frankly, they're just not paying attention to the laws as written. The judges don't have discretion to do that. A judge has a lot of discretion in between the lines. But when it comes to something black and white, like notifying victims and giving them a hearing and ordering restitution, there's just no choice. And I included the counterexample of one of Sater's other cooperating defendants from his original scam in the 90s, and he was ordered to pay $40 million in restitution. Sater got ordered to pay a $25,000 fine to the government. But there's a story that goes with that, and it's it's one of those things. It's a 3-part story, 2 parts on Washington Press. But the story that goes with the story you asked for explains a little bit more.
Hey, can we back up a little bit first, though, and explain to people who Felix Sater is and what were these charges, the original charges, that ultimately became sealed?
So Felix Sater is the son of a Russian mafia associate that lived in Brooklyn, okay, named Mikhail Shapirovsky or Michael Sater, okay. So anyways, Felix goes to Wall Street in the early 90s, and he got into he basically tried to stab a man to death, but he didn't do a good job of it. And, he lies and spins that pretty badly. So I wrote actually a story on the Stern Facts. It's just called Felix Sater Lied to MSNBC. Because, these are records that are public, and I went and pulled them. And Felix Sater stuck a margarita glass through this guy's face, beat him to a bloody pulp, and only barely got restrained from killing him in a Midtown Manhattan bar, because he'd never met the guy before in his life. He hit on a girl. The girl didn't want him. So she went and talked to some other random guy at the bar, and Felix Sater attacked that guy because the girl talked to him. So, after that, he's a convicted felon. These are not easy convictions to get out of. And I should note, Felix's lawyer at Moses and Singer, I believe, his name is Wolf. That was his lawyer back in 1994, at least. He represented Felix Sater in the appeal of that criminal conviction. Just think about that. How many people are able to sustain keeping a lawyer for 24 years after you've become a convicted felon, a violent convicted felon, and to go all the way up to the appeals level. So anyways, that happens. He should have been banned from Wall Street altogether, but there's a few exceptions to what you can still do if you have a felony record. And Felix slipped through all of those exceptions and made himself a partner in a company called State Street, which operated out of 40 Wall Street, the Trump office tower, along with a gentleman named Salvatore Laria, who's a mob associate, and Gennady Klotzman, his co-conspirator, who got the $40 million restitution. And they had a couple of companies, and they were doing a very elaborate pump and dump, moving money offshore to do it. So it was like money laundering racket with, a fraud scam. They'd launder the proceeds of the fraud to try and get away with it all. And then they used mafia muscle to clean up the inevitable messes, because you can't quite run off to court when you're just openly scamming people. And people eventually notice these things. So his story goes that he quit the scam after 2 years. It raked in $60 million in mid-1990s money, which is like raking in 80 or 90. And then the story goes that, he was overseas, ran into a U.S. intelligence officer at a night out drinking that turned out to be a night out drinking with a bunch of Russian intelligence officers. And obviously he's rather fluent in Russian. He's Soviet born, born in Moscow. His father's born in Ukraine. And Sater, supposedly was working with the government, with the U.S. government, but, nobody stepped out of the shadow to confirm anything. There's no confirmation from anybody in the CIA at this point. Okay? There's one FBI agent that's confirmed one thing, and then there's some of what we have through record releases, okay? So, BuzzFeed wrote the heck out of that. Go check out their story. They reported it. They nailed down what the facts are. My story simply notes that nothing that BuzzFeed found to be confirmed by anybody seemed to be a major strategic victory. In fact, if that's all we got out of the guy, we got a bad deal as taxpayers and as citizens. So anyways, Felix accepts a plea deal in 1998 from a prosecutor in the EDNY named Andrew Weissman. That name may be familiar because he's part of Special Counsel Mueller's team. He also prosecuted Enron and a lot of other high-profile cases, and he's considered, I think, the number 2 person in the Special Counsel's office.
I believe he's the one that just raided Cohen's office. Weissman.
No, the Cohen raids were done by the SDNY. U.S. attorney, but Weissman just filed actually the response to Paul Manafort,
right?
In the Virginia, in the Eastern District of Virginia case, which I just wrote about actually, and filed 35 blank subpoenas for tax, money laundering, and I think there's a few charges that are split off there. Tax, money laundering, and mortgage fraud, those are your three big categories. And they actually just issued 35 blank subpoenas from the court. So that's all going to get exciting. That's going to trial in July. But anyway, Weissman is actually the guy who cut the deal with Sater, approved it. Okay? So Sater started cooperating in 98. And something interesting that I found last May, and Sater confirmed in his recent PR blitz, is that he actually met Donald Trump in 1999 at Trump Tower. And my story reported that based on a Russian language interview with Sater conducted on November 15, 2016, where he's extremely candid. And he told the interviewer that, there was a lot of perks to being a cooperator, right? But he told BuzzFeed that he did it all for the thrill. Big lie, huge lie. And that's the thing with these kind of guys, you have to be really on top of them because they're going to lie. They are going to lie. If they know you don't know what's going on, they are going to lie. And MSNBC, BuzzFeed, ABC, CNN. CNN, I thought, did the best interview overall, Chris Cuomo. But nobody was prepared to fact-check him in real time, which is too bad because it's not easy. But it's like, these people have, unlimited budgets. I'm just a guy. So anyway,
I'll tell you this, though. Sater came off very confident. He came off very confident and convincing. And, he has no fear. He has no fear of being any trouble. Right. He's already made his deal. He has no fear, That's the impression that I got.
Actually, it's I agree with you. And that's what confidence men do. Con men. Confidence men are con men. Okay? And yes, he went out there to project a confident image. But one of the things I did with my, reporting, especially in the MSNBC story, which you can find at thesternfacts.com, is to get the images of his tells. Because, even a con man has tells. In fact, Felix Sater has quite a few tells where you can tell that he's lying or, trying to think of something that's evading him or trying to make sure that he's keeping his story straight. And, if you look at the image of that photo, he's just looking off to the side very oddly, and that's because he's like that. He's a shifty guy. But he's honestly one of the smartest criminals I've ever seen.
Oh, yeah.
Read about. So anyways, Sater met Trump in 1999. People did not know about that. And I'll just mention, because it's important to the big picture, this is from my May 2017 story about Sater and Trump, which is really good reading, and I suggest it. Meet the Russian mobster that advised the Trump campaign. Which proved to be true. He was working with, Michael Cohen throughout the campaign. Michael Cohen was half campaign, half Trump organization. A murky situation at best, and probably something best to be avoided. But, Donald Trump got hit with a fine from FinCEN in 1998 himself, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, and they're the ones who police money laundering. And he got hit with that fine, money laundering fine at his Taj Mahal casino. And just think about this. From 1990 to 2010, Donald Trump was under continuous investigation from the IRS CI. Okay? Continuous investigation. And nothing happened. In 2010 to 12, they went on site. And then in 2015, they issued a fine.
Wow.
So, it shows you how, I would say that Trump's relations with the government started in the 1990s, early, and Felix Sater came along. It's just odd that they both got hit with enforcement actions right at the same time, and then the next year they met each other. I think that's a little bit too curt, considering the importance and breadth of the story.
Yeah, and Sater claims that he just walked up to his office and knocked on the door and just introduced himself. That's his official story, Yeah.
Well, it sounds to me like somebody helped him.
Yeah.
Somebody said you need to do this. So, Donald Trump, So he meets Sater in 99. And then they start doing the Bayrock Company in like 2001 or 2. And Felix is telling people, if I say it, it's going to be a Trump hotel, that sort of thing. And then in 2004, something extraordinary happens. A man who used to do business with Vladimir Putin suddenly showed up and turned Trump into a big reality TV show. The Australian producer, Mark Burnett.
Oh, yeah.
The deal immediately preceding NBC's The Apprentice was a deal that he inked with Putin. They brought in an intermediary, and that guy, the next thing he did was turn Donald Trump into a reality TV show star.
You're saying that Burnett had a deal with Putin before he did The Apprentice show?
Yeah, it's in the New York Times.
I had no idea. We got to take a quick commercial break. Grant Stern, we got to take a quick commercial break. We're with Grant Stern. You can find him at the WashingtonPress.com. And also, is that Stern Factory, SternFacts.com?
TheSternFact.com.
TheSternFact.com. And what's your Twitter? People can get a hold of you on Twitter.
Find me at Grant Stern on Twitter.
And you're going to be on Who, What, Where, When, Why, right?
Who, What, Why, soon. I'll post that on Twitter. You just follow me on Twitter at Grant Stern, and you'll see it all.
Who, What, Why?
WPR Rebuttal, covering the sides of the story missed by Wisconsin Public Radio. Bringing you narratives the UW System Board of Regents won't allow. Shedding light on perspectives the owners of WPR don't want you to hear. Every Thursday at 12:30 Central Time, WPR Rebuttal is your destination for grassroots journalism in Sauk County and beyond. Our host, Senator JPO, provides insightful analysis into stories that are only superficially covered by mainstream press. A recent inventory of topics includes college graduate underemployment, yellow journalism in the media, and favoritism in the public sector hiring process. Get your WPR Rebuttal fix Thursdays at 12:30 Central Time.
And now a word from our sponsors.
Hi folks, Ronnie here from Life Change Tea. There's a lot of hubbub about the ramifications of GMOs. First of all, what are GMOs? Genetically modified organisms. Yee! Man-made organisms entering our body, changing and damaging us from the inside out. What's our defense? First of all, not eating them. Second, cleansing from them when we do eat them. Thank God for Life Change Tea at getthetea.com. Life Change Tea cleanses from toxins, heavy metals, and helps flush GMOs out of your body. Our unique blend of herbs help cleanse you from the inside out, helping you feel refreshed and clean of yee. We also carry unique one-of-a-kind supplements. So order online at getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Rid yourself of the yee that contaminates your food and water. Go to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Get the tea, your best defense.
The Opperman Report is brought to you by SubhashTechnosis.com. Subash Technosis is a search engine optimization and website design company. They're located in India, so you know you're going to save a lot of money and get top quality service. They offer all sorts of business process outsourcing, data entry, banking BPO services, recruitment process outsourcing, software testing, offshoring, research network, customer care, press release, content writing and distribution, and much, much more. Now you can get a hold of Subash Technosis by email at info@subashtechnosis.com. Their website is www.subashtechnosis.com, and their Skype is ANUSHASUBASH. Remember, all these shows on Awake are brought to you by emailrevealer.com. You can go to emailrevealer.com and get a copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator. You also do all those kind of different services for you. Online dating service investigations called an online infidelity investigation. And that's where you give us your husband or your boyfriend, your girlfriend's email address, and we trace it back to their online dating websites, and we return a list of all the dating sites that email is registered to. We can expand on that investigation and trace it back to porn sites, escort service sites, swinger sites, gambling websites, and even prescription drug websites, and all kinds of digital forensics, computer and cell phone digital forensics, where we can recover deleted content from an email or a hard drive and produce a report for you that you can use in court. That's emailrevealer.com, or you can contact me at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. We're here with the excellent journalist Grant Stern from the WashingtonPress.com and the SternFact.com. And you got to follow him on Twitter at Grant Stern, because he's got the best stuff out here on all this Russian stuff. You left us off that Burnett and Putin had a connection before The Apprentice. Where were you going?
Yeah. I mean, this is. I actually wrote a really long story on it last year. What I'm going to do is, to make it easier, so I'm just going to tweet it out for everybody. So you should follow me at Grant Stern on Twitter.
Okay.
And I'll push that sucker out right now. Did you know? Because it's really, it's just kind of nuts when you look at the timeline of it, like how this stuff kind of goes, this way and that way.
Yeah, and no one talks about that connection.
Yeah, so anyways, Burnett turns Trump into a star in 2004, and the business kind of took off, because for like a year or two, Trump had like a really shiny top 10 brand name because of the television show.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's come out recently that, like they built a set at Trump Tower because his offices were too crummy, and, they made him into a celebrity, okay? And that's what they're supposed to do. It's drama, it's television, it's entertainment, but nobody ever imagined that people would take this entertainment so seriously. Anyways, like they sold a building in Panama, which you probably have heard about, because now, the Trump lawyers are threatening people in Panama, saying do this or else, and asking the president to undo a court decision, which he has no power to do. That building is a haven for money laundering and international drug traffickers. I mean, we're talking about Panama. Like, it's already that. It's a beautiful building, 70 stories tall, unobstructable water view, and, the Trump name has been removed from the hotel portion. Not sure about the casino yet. There's a casino in there, though, which most people don't know. But they brought in about $70 million in profit from that. And there's been a series of investigative reports. Global Witness reported on it, Reuters, and NBC, MSNBC. And then, right around that time is when they hatched the idea for the Trump Soho. And what they did was they put together an unusually complex real estate deal that actually did take quite a bit of skill to kind of jerry-rig together. It was a terrible idea. Probably best not done that way. Developers sometimes do this. They look at all the options and they just say, I'm going to maximize my floor plan, my square footage that I can sell at any cost. And that's what they did with the Trump Soho Hotel in Lower Manhattan, which has also been recently renamed. Are you familiar with Trump Soho? You've probably heard the name before.
Yeah, the Baylock Group or something like that, right?
Yes, Felix Sater, Bayrock, and the Trump Soho are the three watchwords, right? Like, that's what was going down. Bayrock was Sater, along with Tariq Arif, whatever. I mean, he had a bunch of partners. Let's just leave them out of this. Their money was pretty leave that. I mean, one was arrested for prostitution and Turkey and all sorts of crazy things. So, Sater he was a convicted felon, right? Twice convicted felon when he took the gig at Bayrock. And, Bayrock actually controlled $2 billion worth of real estate, okay, including a project like just a short 10-minute walk from where I live, stuff all over the country. They were in Denver, they were in Tampa, they were in Fort Lauderdale, I think Phoenix, Arizona as well. I mean, they were really ambitious. And they bought a lot of property, and the only thing that got built was the Soho Hotel. Everything else failed, okay? And a lot of it devolved into lawsuits. Well, the Soho Hotel, they borrowed something like $550 million ultimately, and they had $200 million worth of investor equity. And I want to say, I know they sold about 15.8% of the building. I'm not sure how much that was in dollars, but fair to say it was probably $100 million worth of sales. But that was a really big problem for them at Soho. And I'm getting ahead of myself on that sales problem, because what happened was, everything comes together. They've got the reality show. They were using the reality show to pitch the hotel. They even brought people from the reality show to the hotel. It was like a job there was like one of the prizes. I wrote a story about this that says, newly leaked emails show the Trump family participated in bank fraud racket. That's on the sternfacts.com as well, and it's probably linked in these news stories. But they found out in 2007 from the New York Times, because of this guy Klotzman that I mentioned in the last episode. They found out that Felix Sater had a felony conviction, federal felony conviction for racketeering, for stock pump and dump. That should be an automatic disqualifier to be a principal, either an owner or a manager in a venture that, there's a certain amount of ownership maybe you could have. In theory, there's ways you can kind of insulate yourself from this even as a felon, but he wasn't doing any of that. And basically, I've seen the insurance, applications that they lied on, and they, of course, lied to get their bank loans. And once they found out this material information, that they had a partner who was a convicted felon, they didn't inform the bank. And, a bank fraud concealment racket, it also falls under the RICO Act, as I mentioned earlier, the Racketeering Influenced Corrupt Organizations Act. And anyways, the whole Trump family participated in that because they had a meeting about a month later, which is what the leaked emails that I just mentioned describe. And in the emails, which are from Sater and from one of the partners' general counsels, which I got from a bona fide source, which I cannot divulge, but I believe it was obtained through court process because there was a lawsuit that went from 2010 until settlement just last month. I'm sorry, just in February. But the leaked emails showed that there was a meeting and that the Trumps handed it, and that all of them said they were going to participate in that meeting. And Felix Sater sent an email off to his Icelandic partners who were funneling cash from Putin, according to the person that's him, Jody Chris, the executive who found out about this and realized that, if you don't do something to stop the racket, you're a part of the racket. That's kind of how it works. And Felix Sater told the Icelandic people that everybody was upset, that the felony information coming out was very, very damaging, and that Donald Trump was trying to take advantage of the situation to use that to his advantage to take away or squeeze him out of his ownership role and take more points for himself. Trump owned 15%, the kids owned 3%. The family owned 18% total, from what I understand. I know the 18 is solid. So anyways, they continued in that, and then they refinanced in 2010 as well. You got to think back, like put on your history cap to think about what's going on in 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11. Because by the time this information came out in late 2007, like the market had already peaked.
Right.
Okay, the market had peaked 2 years earlier. And New York's market took longer to stall. So they were just hitting the stall right around that time at the end of 2007. And they had borrowed hundreds of millions of dollars. The name is on the line. They're on reality TV every week. They couldn't afford to cancel this project. But Donald Trump still had shredded credit from never paying anybody back and going bankrupt a gazillion times, right? So they were in a big pickle. And at that point, it would have been appropriate to ask for help. But they didn't. And by continuing into that racket and then going through the refinancing, always concealing it, they're all liable. They're all liable. And that's the point of the other story that I wrote about Sater, which is, that newly revealed court records show that the Trump should be liable for, bank fraud with Sater, hiding his criminal past. And, he wrote a complicated email to the Icelandic folks, who all went out of business themselves, explaining elaborately how he would hide his ownership going forward.
Okay?
Oh, boy. Yeah. So right around the time that this is all happening, like late 2007, writing is on the wall, okay? Like anybody who's been in the business a long, long time can see that the music is slowing down a lot and it's about to stop, okay? Then in 2008, Don Jr. goes to Russia in June of 2008 for an Adam Smith conference. He holds a full-scale press conference to say that the Trump family is entering Russia, and had a partner in Ukraine, and they were looking at deals in Sochi. One of the people who spoke at the conference actually happened to be the head of the Sochi, let's call it the Sochi Chamber of Commerce. That's the equivalent, She was except that a Chamber of Commerce person in Russia had sway. They're almost like a business development manager for the state. They kind of go out and scour up the vendors for the things the state wants in one of these kind of projects, which is how things went in Sochi. So, and just so you know, nothing confirmed on this, but there's been speculation that Trump did business in Sochi. But I mean, there's some interesting records, but you would see some more fingerprints, we think. But you never know. I mean, rackets work in mysterious ways. That's all I'm going to say there. So as the markets are crashed like hell at that point, Bear Stearns failed in March of 2008. Well, guess what? Bear Stearns it floated the bonds that made Trump Panama possible.
Wow.
Okay? Like, Bear Stearns could have bailed them out of the Trump Soho project, right? If they had, by miracle started really soon, maybe they would have gotten out or something. But Bear was gone. And then in September, Lehman was gone too. And in between those two incidents happening, Don Jr. goes to Russia, and then all of a sudden, the Miami Herald said, from out of nowhere, a Russian guy showed up and bought Donald Trump's big mansion in Palm Beach for $100 million. And then, of course, Don Jr. famously said, a lot of our assets are Russian. And that was at the end of September 2008. Okay, so this is all going on while Soho is being marketed still. And, I said that the Soho accepted some strange restrictions. Let me ask you, Ed, if I told you that you could buy a condo, but you could only occupy it for a maximum of 120 days a year or 29 consecutive days out of any 35-day period, would you be interested?
They're very unlikely unless it was vacation property, but what was the reason for that?
Because the Trumps took a piece of property near Soho, and they built it into the Trump Soho Hotel. It's like right next to Soho.
Yeah.
But it actually is industrial zoned. And there's a big old trash compactor right next to it, real sexy. But they could not have a residential use to these units. Otherwise, they would not qualify for their zoning, and they wound up accepting these ridiculous restrictions, which they don't keep up with very well. Guess, big surprise.
Right.
They've been fined $500,000 by the city. The neighbors hate them, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, so they took these incredible restrictions, and people can these units because they're also subject to a mandatory rental pool. Okay? Like, those are very extreme because you have no control over this apartment. You're the owner, and all you can do is occupy it 29 days, and, as you heard with those restrictions, So it's not exactly the world's greatest apartment for, like, a lot of money. It's very expensive. These apartments are selling for a hugely expensive price, okay? So they're not doing so well with the sales. Not at all. Not like they did with Trump Panama, okay? And they held a foreign press conference after Don Jr. gets back from Moscow in June of 2008, but before that house in Palm Beach sells. And they told the foreign press that 55 to 60% of this building was sold. Now, in the state of New York, they passed this thing called the Blue Sky Law.
Right.
You ever hear of that?
Yes.
You know why it's called the Blue Sky Law?
Well, yeah, because you can't make promises that everything's rosy.
Exactly, but like in the 1920s, stock, people, that was, the Great Depression started after the big stock crash in 1909. But in the roaring 20s, you had people who would sell stocks that were backed by nothing but the blue sky.
Okay. Okay. That's where that comes from. Okay.
So security backed by nothing more than the sky. So what they did was they said, okay, we can't have a complicated securities law that requires a lot of proof. We need to have a really powerful securities law to prevent people from committing easy frauds and running off right away. Now, this blue sky law, in addition to preventing people from selling the blue sky, it is as easy to enforce as looking up at the blue sky. All you have to do is prove that a false statement was made in connection with the sale of a security, and they expanded it to cover condominiums later. And guess what? Covered both ways, because hotel condominium units are considered securities when they're fully managed investments. In fact, you're supposed to register with the FCC and have a separate sales office to explain the financial part.
Wow. So
this is a very specialized sale and development that they put together. I'll give them credit. You have to know to be able to put something complex like that together. But they may not have done that part right. I wasn't there for that, and I'm not vouching for it. What I am saying is that it's complex, and the simple part is they lied. They lied a lot. And Cy Vance, the Manhattan DA, was investigating them. Then mysteriously, he had a meeting with Mark Kasowitz, who had donated $25,000 to him. The maximum that he'll accept, legal maximum, is $50,000, which is pretty crazy for a prosecutor, for gosh sakes. Well, they returned that money from Kasowitz, and he gave it back to them a few months later. They kept it. And in between all that happening, he didn't present any new information. Career people wanted to go after Don Jr. and Ivanka, but Vance wouldn't go after them. And it was in the wake of an epic fail against Harvey Weinstein, of all people. They got away with murder there, so to speak. And in between all of that, there was a civil lawsuit by the people who had bought the units who wanted their money back. But what's important about the percentage of units sold is that 15% is the minimum threshold to begin selling and closing these units. Like, you can't close the sale if you have less than 15% of a condo sold.
Right.
It's pretty much unheard of to sell off units when you have 15% sold, because there's different ramifications to, doing that. I'm not going to get into it. It's real complex, but your taxes can go up as a developer. And there's certain guarantees that you're on the hook for. And it's just, it's better to sell out when you have like 50%. But those statements are definitely material to the value of these units, right? So they got out of that somehow. But in the midst of all that mess, they got sued by an insider who they screwed, a guy named Jody Chris. And litigation lasted from 2010 to 2018. I interviewed his lawyers. They were only able to give me like a little bit of story, like what you pretty much see in my written story. The very nice comments about how sunshine is great, because they've been gagged. But they were on the case for a long time, and another firm came in, and then just recently, everything was confidentially settled in February. Okay, a massive multi-year racketeering, fraud, and unjust enrichment lawsuit. So, that has been ongoing this whole time. That kind of kept the battle going. But after 2010, Sater was ejected from Bayrock at some point and became a senior advisor to the Trump company, like Trump organization. And you've probably seen the business card. I made this image that's kind of made the rounds with the business card and a photo of Trump and Sater arm in arm. So, he became a senior advisor for a couple of years. And all of this time, Sater was working on Moscow Tower projects. He tried to set the tower up in 2004. He took Ivanka and Don Jr. to Moscow in 2006. They met with this corrupt developer named Mikhail Babel, who's wanted right now for embezzlement. And he's a Deripaska lieutenant. Then in 2008, they tried again when, with the press releases and stuff, and they were working with this guy, Pavel Fuchs, Fuks, who was the developer of Moscow City, which becomes relevant later. Then, in 2013, Miss Universe happens. And, I mean, just to kind of fill in some blanks here, Donald Trump hired Roger Stone and Sam Nunberg in 2011. Felix Sater cuts his final deal in 2009. In 2010, he becomes a Trump senior advisor. In 2011, Trump hires political consultants and starts testing messages.
Wow.
Okay? Wow. But this was all raging. This stuff was raging, and a petition went to the Supreme Court to unseal Felix Sater's record, and I feel like that's what, I think that's what one of the big reasons that he decided not to run in 2012. So, in 2013, he meets with the Agalarovs. Oh, wait, I'm, running forward too fast again here. I wrote a story recently based on a Guardian report. The Guardian reported, the real estate side of something that I reported the finance and banking side of. Donald Trump Jr. visited Latvia, Riga, Latvia, and he went there in 2012 for a meeting with the paid speech at this place called Baltic International Bank. But in 2011, Igor Krutoy, who was a Putin campaign surrogate this year, last month, Trump was meeting with him and his associates in 2011. Then in 2012, Don Jr. goes over there, and the Latvian authorities started investigating all of that. They say that the building did not get stopped because of that investigation. And in 2013, Miss Universe happened. They meet the Agalarovs. Trump goes over there, PP tape maybe, who knows? but they announced a Trump Tower in the Agalarovs development, which is called Crocus City. And, that Trump Tower was an on-the-table project until right after the election with the Agalarov family, as, according to their own statements. Then, but obviously nothing happened. We don't know why. I mean, I've got a story with pictures of it, press releases, whole nine yards. Then, in 2014, Trump started doing the speaking circuit. There was a report from Real Clear Politics that showed how he funneled cash from his charitable foundation into his political stuff, donating to all these conservative groups who then gave him speaking gigs. That's illegal. And in 2015, he declared famously on, the escalator of the Trump Tower. But after he had declared, Felix Sater was working on a Moscow Trump Tower in, November, December 2015. And famously, he wrote to Michael Cohen that, he would round up all of Putin's people and make help him get elected, make it happen. And, he went on TV, and one interviewer, he said, I don't know those people. But yeah, if we had actually done that, I would have made it happen. I would have gone out and rounded those people up and done it. Look, man, this guy Felix Sater, he knows Putin's people, okay? And so did Trump. There's not any question of it. The Trump-Russia dossier said that Putin started courting Trump 5 years before the election. Igor Krutoy meets with him 5 years before the election, okay? And that's a campaign surrogate who is a real estate developer, but a campaign surrogate for Putin just this past month. So Sater is obviously kind of tied up in this. I mean, he's a Russian mafia member pretty much. He ratted on all the Italian mafia guys. Sounds like a good strategy, right? To get immunity, take out your enemies.
Right.
Well, in 2015, all that goes down, and Sater is emailing Michael Cohen during the campaign about a Moscow Trump Tower deal in Moscow City, which was Pavel Fuchs's, big project. He ran that whole district. It's like a planned high-rise district. I mean, it's got they were talking about putting up a 60-story tower and branding it, with the Trump name. But Fuchs objected to the commission structure, which would have cost him $80 million to brand, the Trump Tower in Russia. So anyways, all that's going on. We don't know the real story behind the Trump Tower in Moscow during the campaign. That sounds really, really suspicious. They were working with a company called IC Expert. IC Expert is run by a Cypriot lawyer It has offshore ownership itself. It had zero experience in luxury development, and they were talking about doing a mega high-rise. So, it all seemed to me like a straw deal, as we call it in the real estate market, where, you have two parties executing something, but one party is working on behalf of somebody else. So anyways, Sater is deeply involved in all that. And then he donated to the Trump campaign. He visited campaign headquarters in July of 2016. And, the media all just kind of said, oh, he's the mob guy. We should stay away from that.
Is there any way that Sater's not cooperating? Is there any way that Sater's not cooperating?
It's 0%, dude. It was reported in McClatchy. No. This was McClatchy, D.C.
Right.
A very conservative mainstream media outlet reported that Felix Sater is cooperating, and I wrote a story about that at WashingtonPress.com. You can check out my Twitter feed. It's on there. It's not too old. This past Friday, they said that Sater started to cooperate with Mueller. And now that you've heard the whole story, I can rip apart some of the exciting parts from my recent reporting, because I really did actually cover everything that I just mentioned in the long format 3-part story on the sternfacts.com. So,
wait, can we take a commercial break before we get to the next segment?
Let's do it.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. We're with Grant Stern. My God, this guy knows more about this than you hear anywhere. And I think a lot of it has to do because you're an expert on mortgages. Am I right? On mortgage.
I'm a mortgage broker,
yeah,
and have been for 15 years. So, it takes a finance background to understand this kind of complex stuff and distill it into something that's understandable.
Yeah,
that's really, not easy.
Yeah, you can tell. WashingtonPress.com and TheSternFact.com and Who, What, Why. Facts with an S or no?
Facts with an S.
With an S. Okay, I had it facts first. You said it was.
WPR Rebuttal, covering the sides of the story missed by Wisconsin Public Radio, bringing narratives the UW System Board of Regents won't allow, shedding light on perspectives the owners of WPR don't want you to hear. Every Thursday at 12:30 Central Time, WPR Rebuttal is your destination for grassroots journalism in Sauk County and beyond. Our host, Senator JPO, provides insightful analysis into stories that are only superficially covered by mainstream press. A recent inventory of topics includes college graduate underemployment, yellow journalism in the media, and favoritism in the public sector hiring process. Get your WPR Rebuttal fix Thursdays at 12:30 Central Time.
And now a word from our sponsors.
Hi, folks. Ronnie here from Life Change Tea. There's a lot of hubbub about the ramifications of GMOs. First of all, what are GMOs? Genetically modified organisms. Yee! Man-made organisms entering our body, changing and damaging us from the inside out. What's our defense? First of all, not eating them. Second, cleansing from them when we do eat them. Thank God for Life Change Tea at getthetea.com. Life Change Tea cleanses from toxins, heavy metals, and helps flush GMOs out of your body. Our unique blend of herbs help cleanse you from the inside out, helping you feel refreshed and clean of yee. We also carry unique one-of-a-kind supplements. So order online at getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Rid yourself of the yee that contaminates your food and water. Go to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Get the tea, your best defense.
The Opperman Report is brought to you by SubhashTechnosis.com. Subhash Technosis is a search engine optimization and website design company. They're located in India, so you're going to save a lot of money and get top quality service. They offer all sorts of business process outsourcing, data entry, banking BPO services, recruitment process outsourcing, software testing, offshoring, research network, customer care, press release, content writing and distribution, and much, much more. Now, you can get a hold of Subhash Technosis by email at info@subhashtechnosis.com. Their website is www.subhashtechnosis.com, and their Skype is ANUSH ASUBASH. Remember, all these shows on Awake are brought to you by emailrevealer.com. You can go to emailrevealer.com and get a copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator. You also do all those kind of different services for you. Online dating service investigations called an online infidelity investigation. And that's where you give us your husband or your boyfriend, your girlfriend's email address, and we trace it back to their online dating websites, and we return a list of all the dating sites that that email is registered to. We can expand on that investigation and trace it back to porn sites, escort service sites, swinger sites, gambling websites, and even prescription drug websites, and all kinds of digital forensics, computer and cell phone digital forensics, where we can recover deleted content from an email or a hard drive and produce a report for you that you can use in court. That's emailrevealer.com, or you can contact me at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. We're here with Grant Stern from WashingtonPress.com and thesternfacts.com. So we left off, you were telling us about Felix Sater. Do you think maybe that press tour that he did was the prosecution wanted to get him out there to inoculate the viewers from his margarita glass stabbing and his background and fraud and all that kind of stuff?
That's a plausible explanation. I mean, moreover than that, he's concerned about his own image too, you know?
What does he do for a living now? Is he still working?
What does Sater do now?
Yeah.
I don't know. Let me read you this from the unsealed court records, and then you can tell me what he's doing.
Okay.
So what happened is there was a recent unsealing of records, and it was pretty wild because what we learned about these new records was that the judge said, I'm going to censor everything to do with Felix Sater's pre-sentencing report. That's the document prosecutors compile when they're about to sentence a cooperating witness and end the relationship, okay? Now, they started his in 2004. And a copy of it, he, like a fool, he left a copy of it on a Bayrock hard drive, and a whistleblower inside the company gave it to the whistleblower suing him, okay? So the whole fight is over keeping that secret, even though it's been released already and people have it now. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Once something has been unsealed, the law says you can't reseal it. Okay? Hold on. I don't know if you hear that, but somebody's calling me here.
No, we can't hear anything now.
Oh, good. So anyway, once there's been sunlight, you can't throw it back into a black hole. Okay? And we have a First Amendment right to see what's in our dockets in our court system and to give oversight, you know? So, anyways, at this point, the censorship in this case is so extreme, right?
Okay.
It's so awful that the judges are trying to blot out the sun, okay? And you know how you like to look at an eclipse, you have to look at the little box, you shouldn't look directly at the sun?
Sure.
Well, that's kind of how we stumbled, I stumbled really upon this, but what they did was they said, everything regarding the pre-sentencing report we're going to censor. But some of this information was publicly available elsewhere. There's no way to confirm it because, it's just whatever these two lawyers said, right? And it's what they told the Supreme Court in 2012. And these people have been trying to keep it under wraps forever. So the judge did something really funny. She kind of confirmed everything that highlighted that we could see on the unsealed copy in the National Archives and actually in a different court docket related to the case, because they tried to put the lawyers in jail for, revealing this document.
Yeah.
And so it's like in the story, you can see two court dockets next to each other. It's all annotated. I'm not going to go over all of it, but Doe's probation officer, Doe being Sater, reported 4 things, okay? 5 things. Item 1, Doe was receiving no salary from his firm while he was skimming millions. Okay? In other words, he skimmed millions of dollars off of Bayrock, and that's actually what the complaint, that's what the civil complaint by Jody Criss alleged, that they took a $50 million investment and pretty much just banked it. Sater and the partners of Bayrock.
No, then they pay no taxes because they're not taking a salary.
Gets better. 2, reported that Doe had a negative net worth while he was spending large sums on rent and buying a home. 3, admitted that he had been told, this is the probation officer, the federal probation officer for Doe admitted that he had been told not to ask the whereabouts of the proceeds of Doe's crime, as to which Doe admitted taking millions. So that's in reference to the 1990s crime. So Sater pretty much started with about $8 to $10 million. We're guessing, there's, it's tough to estimate exactly. And he could have made $2 million. He could have made $5 million. He could have made $10 million. Who knows? He could have made more. I mean, these people were moving money around to try and avoid detection. But let's just say somewhere between 5 and 10 is what his take was from the 1990s scam. He kept investing in and working with it. And then we know that he split at least one payment of $50 million with his partners. We're talking about a lot of money.
Yeah.
Felix Sater got to keep from the proceeds of these crimes. Okay? And the federal probation officer knew about all this stuff. And then this is the important part. Number 4, admitted knowledge that Doe was hiding his conviction from his firm, partners, and victims. The federal government knows that Felix Sater was running a bank fraud concealment racket. Okay, they know it. That's it. There's nothing for a prosecutor to prove here.
In those documents, who was he ratting against in the case to get that kind of a deal?
Well, you see, that's the thing. He ratted out like 17 mobsters in the first case. But then, he says that he's like a CIA asset, but there's nobody confirming that. Nobody confirming that. And until we get a copy of the pre-sentencing report, we're not going to be able to confirm what he did or didn't do to get his deal. You catch me?
Yeah, I did.
That's why I thought he kept secret, because that would obviously let some cats out of some bags. But, it's not going to be secret forever. I promise you that. There's court filings. I mean, I've been speaking with a First Amendment lawyer in New York about pursuing this. His name is James Henry. He's interested. This is really crazy stuff. But in a nutshell, federal government knows that Sater committed the crime, and all you have to do is just prove the Trump part of it. And there's lots of emails in this case, and there's 8 years worth of litigation, and then they settled the case only 14 months after it went into the discovery. Okay? In the discovery phase of a trial, you ask for stuff, the other side has to give it to you. You can be compelled to give it. And this unsealing, it's like the timing was uncanny. Judge announces, I'm unsealing stuff on February 10th. February 17th, I get a threat letter from Sater's attorney on a Saturday night on President's weekend at 6 o'clock. He says, we will taking appropriate action. Then, something like the 22nd, like 5 days later, they settled the case of this February. So, I feel like, there's some action there. Obviously it's a confidential settlement. But really, the fact that the federal government knew about the concealment racket is a big, big deal. And I think that's probably why he settled. Because that's most likely the most difficult allegation to prove. And the government knows it. And the unsealed records proved it. So, there you have it. Like, that's important information. But what's most important about Sater cooperating and why he's cooperating, and by the way, I just tweeted out, so your listeners can kind of check this out. I just tweeted out the two stories about the bank fraud stuff and the story about Sater cooperating. And inside the Sater cooperating story, there's a link, and the link is to his cooperation agreement, which nobody else has really reported that I know of. Okay? So the cooperation agreement is really explicit. He promised to give restitution to his victims. And that's the fifth item in the list I was reading to you from, that he agreed in writing to give restitution to the victims that he later screwed.
The $40 million.
real people that he took $60 million
$60
from.
million.
They said 60 in the cooperation agreement. Everybody else said 40. To me, that kind of indicates maybe he even got away with 20 million. Okay? But anyway, I digress. There's some terms and conditions in these cooperation agreements, and there's a reason why you don't want to go out and commit crimes. And there's a reason why being a snitch might be, it helped him out a lot. But once you go snitch, you don't go back. Okay? And inside of his cooperation agreement, he waived all rights to suppress evidence against him, standard stuff, and he waived the statute of limitations.
Wow.
For his crime. And he agreed, this is the important part, he agreed in writing that he would not commit any further crimes, and if the office, being the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of New York, should decide that he had committed a further crime, then they could enforce the penalty within the waived statute of limitations using all the evidence he gave them of his crime. And that would be that.
It's interesting. So he's on the hook with them for life because he's waived the statute of limitations, right? So now, why would Trump, in his right mind, a guy who was a pretty savvy criminal himself, why would he get involved with a guy like that who's an on-the-record rat?
Well, you see, here's the thing. Nobody knew that he was an on-the-record rat. Nobody found out that he was a rat until 2012.
Okay.
Okay? He spins this huge story how he's a CIA guy.
Right.
Okay? So, you can't take everything that a rat says at face value.
Yeah, there's that book about him, too, The Scorpion, something like that, The Scorpion?
Yes, Scorpion and the Frog.
Now, is that fake,
yes,
that book, or what? What's going on?
It's not stated. So anyways, that's the thing. My speculation is that his cooperation agreement contains terms that predispose him to cooperating because he pretty much doesn't have a choice to own him.
Right.
And McClatchy DC reported on Friday that he's cooperating. On Monday, Michael Cohen, his best friend from growing up in Brooklyn, gets raided. Do you think there's a really big coincidence between those? I mean, come on, man.
Right.
Like Friday, one thing happens. Monday, the next.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
It all seems, yeah. And if you notice, they said they're looking for evidence of bank fraud.
Right.
Which I just described to you. So, I mean, I feel like there's a solid chance, and I'm not saying that it's, 100%. I would say more like, 51, which is a lot when you're talking about guessing what people are doing that keep tons of secrets, like investigators do. But there's a 51% chance that, my work has helped, turn the soup here. Because I'll tell you, Sater's been reading my work. He had his lawyer lash out at me on President's Day weekend, and I responded by, telling him that I'd be happy to review anything he had. So, when you ask if it was the prosecutor's idea, it was my idea. I said, hey, listen, if what you're saying is true, just provide me with the records. I'd gladly report on it. Then they did that with BuzzFeed.
Let me ask you this. The part about Access Hollywood tape, there's a scroll right now on MSNBC that one of the reasons they raided Cohen was information about the Access Hollywood tape. Would Sater have anything to do with that?
Theoretically, he could have anything to do with anything, but I just don't know.
Right.
I mean, that sounds like some sort of inside tip.
Right.
There's a lot of people. I mean, I want you to think about this. The people that worked on NBC's The Apprentice said that they had tapes of Donald Trump that would be bombshells, but they also had giant NDAs with liquidated damages clauses. So, I mean, it's one of those things like anything could happen. I mean, he could have paid hush money to keep something related to Access Hollywood. I mean, who knows? We don't know. But what we do know is that these people bragged about how good they were at hushing everything. So, it seems to me like there may be some very fertile ground, as in like hundreds of allegations could have been paid off. I mean, they could have been paying off reporters. Who freaking knows, man?
Yeah,
These people are not exactly the most scrupulous bunch.
Yeah, if this is what we know on the surface, you could just imagine what they're working on behind the scenes. But
Precisely.
But
I mean, this is but I've definitely dug under the iceberg and cracked the sucker in half.
No, you're doing great work, man. You're doing great work on this. I can't thank you enough. We went way over the time. You wanted to give me a half hour. You went 90 minutes.
I won't tell anybody, I promise.
Yeah, listen, thank you so much, man. How can people get a hold of you? And what are you working on next?
You can get a hold of me on Twitter at Grant Stern. That's the best place to go. No spaces, at Grant Stern on Twitter. And working on next. Oh, boy. So I don't want to overly excite your audience, but I'll tell you exactly what I'm working on without giving it all away, okay? Let's see. The KGB connections that one of Facebook's largest early investors had.
Really?
Yeah. Like, nobody else has this guy's backstory. We've got it. Everybody else has to, like, 1995 or so. And they don't have the important parts. Also, how about we know the guy that introduced Alexander Torshin to American politics and presumably to the NRA at some point. Like, he was a Republican, a real Republican, a real insider. Not the guy that the Washington Post reported, not that comedic Tennessean, somebody serious and in D.C. So we have we have their identity. That's not in question. It's just a matter of finishing the reporting because it's so complex. There's so much more going on there, and I take pride in presenting a complete and understandable story, not just here's a little slice.
Gotcha.
So that's a good story. Mother Jones asked me for that one, and I'm going to give them a crack at it, but I need to finish it. It's detailed work. And let me see. The same guy, we have a copy of his book. And he has a book that is unlike any other because this gentleman wrote a book called basically How to Lobby in America, How to Influence American Politics.
Wow.
And his publisher is the Russian Foreign Ministry. Not a lot of books written about lobbying in America and published by the Russian Foreign Ministry that are totally, totally innocent. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
And I mean, that's just, that's the way I see it. So, these are exciting stories that I've been working on for over a year. The Sater story has been, I would say, 8-9 months in the making, 10 months in the making. And other people have bits and pieces, but I don't think anybody has put all of them together in the manner that I have. And, there's, if you just go to the sternfacts with an S.com, you can find, I would say, about 6 or 7 stories. It's just one long blog roll style front page. And for your listening audience, this is not done yet, but I'm setting up coalitionreport.com and dworkinreport.com, which is going to be a podcast and news aggregator website. And that's all going to launch in Q2 of this year, which is this quarter. But, the sternfacts.com has all of that. It's one page. If you just hit Control F and look for Sater, or Soho, there's a lot of stories on this, and you can follow it longitudinally from bottom to top, and really get an idea of what's actually going on out there.
Grant Stern, thank you so much, man, and keep us posted, okay? If something new comes up, we'll put you right on the air.
Alrighty, Ed. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for bringing my stories to your listeners. It's a pleasure, and we'll get to the bottom of this one day.
I believe it. Always great stuff, and you're right on the edge, man. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right, Ed. Have a great one.
Good night. Well, there you got Grant Stern, man. Grant Stern. Check out, just Google Rosneft, Trump, Grant Stern. You read the whole Rosneft story, which explains everything. And then now all this stuff, he's right on top of this Felix Sater thing. And then, just like he said, Sater's emailing him, 5 minutes after the story's up.
WPR Rebuttal, covering the sides of the story missed by Wisconsin Public Radio, bringing narratives the UW System Board of Regents won't allow, shedding light on perspectives the owners of WPR don't want you to hear. Every Thursday at 12:30 Central Time, WPR Rebuttal is your destination for grassroots journalism in Sauk County and beyond. Our host, Senator JPO, provides insightful analysis into stories that are only superficially covered by mainstream press. A recent inventory of topics includes college graduate underemployment, yellow journalism in the media, and favoritism in the public sector hiring process. Get your WPR rebuttal fix Thursdays at 12:30 Central Time.
And now a word from our sponsors.
Hi folks, Ronnie here from Life Change Tea. There's a lot of hubbub about the ramifications of GMOs. First of all, what are GMOs? Genetically modified organisms. Yee! Man-made organisms entering our body, changing and damaging us from the inside out. What's our defense? First of all, not eating them. Second, cleansing from them when we do eat them. Thank God for Life Change Tea at getthetea.com. Life Change Tea cleanses from toxins, heavy metals, and helps flush GMOs out of your body. Our unique blend of herbs help cleanse you from the inside out, helping you feel refreshed and clean of yee. We also carry unique one-of-a-kind supplements. So order online at getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Rid yourself of the yee that contaminates your food and water. Go to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Get the tea, your best defense.
The Opperman Report is brought to you by SubhashTechnosis.com. Subash Technosis is a search engine optimization and website design company. They're located in India, so you know you're going to save a lot of money and get top quality service. They offer all sorts of business process outsourcing, data entry, banking BPO services, recruitment process outsourcing, software testing, offshoring, research network, customer care, press release, content writing and distribution, and much, much more. Now you can get a hold of Subash Technosis by email at info@subashtechnosis.com. Their website is www.subashtechnosis.com, and their Skype is ANUSHASUBASH. Remember, all these shows on Awake are brought to you by emailrevealer.com. You can go to emailrevealer.com and get a copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator. You also do all the kind of different services for you. Online dating service investigations called an online infidelity investigation. And that's where you give us your husband or your boyfriend, your girlfriend's email address, and we trace it back to their online dating websites, and we return a list of all the dating sites that email is registered to. We can expand on that investigation and trace it back to porn sites, escort service sites, swinger sites, gambling websites, and even prescription drug websites, and all kinds of digital forensics, computer and cell phone digital forensics, where we can recover deleted content from an email or a hard drive and produce a report for you that you can use in court. That's emailrevealer.com, or you can contact me at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com.